order for many of these AI models and automation efforts to be successful, we need willing participants, right? We should be trying to make their job easier, because if the humans on the receiving end of that technology want to slow down those efficiency gains or stand in the way of more AI adoption, they probably can.
Hello and welcome to the AI Master Group podcast, featuring the people who are building the future of AI in their work today. I'm your host, Jim Griffin. Today, we'll have a chance to meet Jodi Blomberg, who's the VP of Data Science at Cox Automotive. Prior to that, she was the Senior Director of Data Science at Waste Management. And prior to that, the Senior Managing Director of Enterprise Data Science at Charles Schwab. She's also had roles as the head of the Advanced Analytics Lab at SAS. And prior to all of that, she earned her master's degree in mathematics at the University of Colorado. Welcome, Jodi.
Thank you for having me.
You know, Jodi, you've obviously, as we've all heard, you've had some very important roles at some very notable brands. Can you describe a bit about that journey?
Sure. I started out as a data scientist and worked as one for a long time. And after I left SAS, I wanted to kind of see what life was like on the inside rather than serving clients, sort of being the client. So I started at Charles Schwab and later ended up running data science there. And Schwab is really focused on the client journey and the client experience. This is people's money, and so the client experience is almost a product in and of itself, building that trust. So really focused on the digital experience, the chatbots, all of that digital experience and call experience that we give those clients. Then I moved to Waste Management, which is a wildly different world. As head of data science there, that's a lot more about landfills and truck drivers and routing and optimization and pricing and forecasting. And so I learned a ton. It was a really fun problem set, very different to work in the physical space than the digital one. And now I'm at Cox Automotive, so I get a little bit of both. It's a family of companies that encompasses both digital properties and dealer software. And software as a service type solutions, as well as we actually run auctions, right? We have fixed operations. We recondition cars. We transport cars. So lots of that physical side of the space as well, which I think if you're in AI and ML, it's a kind of a fun time to be in that space. A lot of that's getting digitized today.
That's very interesting. Cox Automotive, it has a lot of different dimensions to it. What are some of the better known for the average person on the street? What are some of the ways that they might interface with Cox Automotive, perhaps without knowing it?
Sure. If you're not a car dealer and you're my mom, then we make Kelley Blue Book. And so that is a well-known brand, Autotrader.com, and some of those kind of things that the consumers actually would touch, that you and I would touch in order to buy a car or understand things about a car.
Very interesting. So those things all connect together in some way, I imagine.
Indeed. In fact, that allows us, right, we're under the Cox Automotive family of brands. It's about 17 brands under there. And they do range across the automotive space, but that also allows us to have a pretty rich data set across automotive transactions and vehicles used in new cars in the market today. That's fairly unique.
I would imagine, I'm just taking a wild guess here, that you might know more about an individual car than maybe perhaps anyone else does.
Yes, there are times when we know more about the car perhaps than the buyer and the seller, and that's some of the value that we bring to the table, is really helping folks understand when we can understand how a car should be valued, what's the history of that car, whether they want an insurance product on that car, things like that.
So, given all of that, what a rich data set you've got there. So, what are some of the top use cases for AI and ML at a company like yours?
Fortunately, given 17 brands, it's a pretty wide range. But you can imagine I already mentioned the thing like Kelley Blue Book or the value of a car, whether that's for a dealer or for you and me. Those are obviously algorithmically driven. We don't, we predict, that's a prediction, right, of what the car value is. And we worry a lot about making sure that's quite accurate. So that's one end. But of course, there's other things like recommendation engines. What kind of, think of a vehicle recommendation engine or next best action from a customer side or a CRM work, all of that, I think of sort of classic AI/ML work. And then we have a set of assurance products. So there's also financing for dealers, and that involves a lot of risk and loss forecasting, as you, as any business dealing with lending money would have. And then we've got all this physical side, right? So we've got car inspectors, we have folks that fix in fleet operations, that fix a broken down semi on the side of the road, and we're putting technology in the hands of those workers as well, right? And seeing how we can make their job better. So much of that is AI or Gen AI combined, delivered right, to put that in plain English, but telling them what part they need to bring or what's the likely thing that's wrong based on what's coming in off the codes in the car, for example. So there's just a really rich set of problems across our spectrum, and I think we just really work on having the discipline to know which things to solve for first.
The discipline. That's very interesting. And I don't know how much AI and ML one would find in sort of a down the street entity that does repair for brakes or things like that, telling that person, I imagine there's a fair amount, but this situation where somebody has to drive to a site and hopefully they're bringing the right part with them, and I can imagine all the logistics all the way back from that could get pretty complex. But what you mentioned just now is interesting. So there's an investment dimension to all of this. You're going to wrestle a problem to the ground, and you have to decide which ones you're going to go after. I think you have a framework for how to think about that. Do I remember that correctly?
You do. And investment's the right word. I view our work as an investment portfolio. So the biggest block of work is steady returns. Those are things, we belong to the product and technology org, and so product asks us for things, right? I need a recommendation engine, or I need this prediction, and we spend about 60 to 70% of our time fulfilling a request, working with products, delivering value. Those are sure bets, and absolutely our bread and butter. Way on the other end of the spectrum is our R&D work. We spend around 5 to 10% a year on that, and those are some moonshots. So those are your high risk, high reward. You can be disciplined about making sure you understand the back of the envelope business case. Those are really about reducing uncertainty. In the best case scenario, moonshot becomes part of the product roadmap, right? And somebody asks us for it. But sometimes we're out there trying out someone's crazy idea, and we try to do that in the shortest amount of time possible. And they have to have a value statement and other things, right? We have to rank those appropriately. And then in the middle is what I call strategic bets. Most often there, we're working with product and technology or the business, where we know that the problem is known, in that the metric is known. We know what we're trying to push. We're not sure whether we have the data to do that or whether an AI is the right answer for that. And so we're helping to kind of shape that problem and reduce that uncertainty so we can get on a roadmap. And that's where the remainder of our time is. And so I do balance that like an investment portfolio. I do need some clear returns. If you don't know how much money your data scientists and machine learning engineers are making for the company, I would stop listening to this podcast and go figure that out. But the sure bets give us the kind of floor, so we know that we're providing value to the company. Some of those R&D bets pay off, and they become part of that floor to make money for the company, and same with those strategic bets. In the R&D side, on the high risk, high reward, my view is the other thing we're doing is trying to shut down infeasible ideas as quickly as possible, so we don't spend a lot of time and money trying to implement a shiny object that isn't really going to make the company money. So I'm looking for an exit ramp pretty often on those. I want us to shut them down if they don't work. And that does require, like I said, some level of discipline about being honest with ourselves and with our business partners about what the business case is and what it will really take to get there.
Very interesting. I love that concept of your projects as a investment portfolio. And it's a blended portfolio that's got some bread and butter sure bets and some moonshots and some strategic. That's really nice. Maybe some time I'd like to get a little bit more insight into this thing that you just mentioned about something doesn't work. And that's a hard call to make, actually. When do you decide that it doesn't work? Who gets to decide that, and what is it about it that doesn't work? Because with enough effort, anything almost can work. But, so shutting that down, that might be, I'm kind of interested about that. How do you shut things, how do you make that decision?
I think in an ideal world, you made that decision before you started. So if you have gotten to an agreement with your business partner or a stakeholder, whoever's, or even within your own data science team, if it's their idea, about what it would take to be successful and how you will measure it. And also clearly, what's your hypothesis? Again, I don't want R&D to go longer than 4 to 6 weeks without some kind of outcome. But a good example might be someone can come back and say, we could do that, but we're not going to have that data for a year. Great, call me back in a year. Another example could be, we have the data, we've built a model, we cannot reach the level of accuracy that you require. The quality is not there, or you're not collecting the right data, and let's stop doing that. So as long as we've defined what the criteria for going to the next step is, it does make it easier to shut down, because you said up front what would make this a success or not, and really what would make this, here's the question I'm trying to answer in this month or 6 week time. And that does not mean it's easy. More often what we see, candidly, is we may say, don't do this, but we could go check on this other direction with the data we have, or we could do this other thing that may be more useful, and then we go spend some time there. I don't consider that a bad outcome. I think another good outcome sometimes is not now. Yes, that works. We're not ready to do that. Our stakeholders are not ready, or our business partner is not ready. And so they may think they're ready, but when they find out what it will take to get there and we show them, they're not ready. And if it gets used a year later, I think that's also fine.
That's very plausible. Yes. Now, a subset of all of this, inescapably, is Gen AI. A lot of us have our eye on that, and I'm sure you do as well. So, curious, have you found any use cases that seem like a good fit for your type of business in Gen AI?
Sure. I split those into two kinds, right? There's this customer-facing element, meaning things that we would put in our software, right, to serve a dealer, like content generation or CRM type things. I think most user interfaces are going to have those. You've got to do that, even just to stay competitive. There's a whole slew of use cases around internal efficiency, right? Automating part of ourselves, like whether that's trying to draft data definitions for our data marketplace, or trying to automate some part of a call center. That's also going to be table stakes at some point. Everyone is going to run an efficient call center, right? Gen AI is for everyone. Everyone is going to have software engineers with coding assistants in the future. So we have to do those things as well. We will see some efficiency from that, but it won't be a competitive advantage because everyone else will do it as well. And then I think there's this smaller number of use cases where we can actually make money. And the differentiator there is, what can we do with the data that only we have? So a more concrete example might be if we're able to predict in good old-fashioned AI ML on structured data, we may be able to predict, again, what's the most common repair for this type of code, or here's the parts you should take, or here's what that might cost, right? Those are predictions. But we can deliver that using Gen AI in plain English. Hey, you should look under the hood here first. You should check this part second, right? This is most often this is broken. And so those combo solutions, I think, probably will be the differentiating ones where we can really open up some differentiator or some revenue. Like I said, I think those first two buckets are must-dos, but will be harder for the CFO to see as free cash flow, and will require an incredible amount of discipline on the business side to actualize those savings. And that's not to say we shouldn't do it. It's just we should go in clear-eyed.
Interesting. So one of the things that you mentioned just now that caught my attention was this distinction that you're making about data that only we have. And it occurs to me that there's a strategic dimension to that. And there may also be more investment value there. I'm asking about that because there's a parallel kind of decision that many of us have to make, which is the build versus buy decision. And I wonder about your thoughts about build versus buy and how you make those kinds of decisions.
We make them every day, whether that's AI or Gen AI. I run an internal data science team. We have, I think, close to 70 data scientists or ML engineers working across the company. Mostly on my team, but not every single one. And they can build stuff, and they're already here. But my view is that we should be sizing that team and thinking carefully about what should we do that only we could do.
You're listening to the AI Master Group podcast.
They can build stuff, and they're already here. But my view is that we should be sizing that team and thinking carefully about what should we do that only we could do. So many solutions will now be commoditized. Many things that maybe a data science team used to do, you can now easily do with Gen AI. Like, nobody needs to categorize what a phone call transcript's about. That's pretty easy. And so those things will either most likely just come in through our vendors, right? Like Salesforce is going to add a bunch of stuff. Your vendors are going to add all of these capabilities that maybe you used to have to come to us for. So what does an internal data science team do? When do we build? Well, to me, we build when we're the only ones with the data, so we're not super excited to give it a vendor. Or it's a revenue maker. That's, of course, why we should put our employees on things that make money, right? Or things, because part of our role, too, is that we're there for the long haul. So we're there being consultative, understanding the business problem, understanding what it's going to take to get the value out, having a seat at that table with product and with engineering and with even operations and business stakeholders to work out, here's the things we can tweak in a model, or we can change these thresholds, we can have this false positive, right? And you're acting in more a consultative way when you do build, I think. It's not often we get a request that's so easy. If it's too easy, I'm not sure we should build it. We should probably just buy it for cheaper. So I think right now the space is super crowded, as you can imagine. Everyone is putting Gen AI in every product. I think we're still sorting through, like everyone, what we should build versus what we might purchase. But occasionally with Gen AI being so cheap and accessible to everyone, it's quite cheap for us to build things. So we will build a solution that lots of people would want if it's really cheap. We just built something last month that took about 2 weeks of our time that I'm sure will be a product that you can buy next year, but for 2 weeks, why not do it?
Excellent. So I think you mentioned that you've got a team of about 70, more or less. And there's always this question about, okay, do I need to grow the team, or is it the right size, and so forth. There's this parallel question as well. Is it hard to find the right people that check all the boxes when you're trying to add to these teams?
I think a lot about what is the future of a data scientist or machine learning model builder in the age of AutoML. Gen AI is super accessible, which is good. So what do? I think our role is to be consultative, right? The skill, anybody can write .fit in Python, even me. But I think our skill is in understanding the business, understanding the data, and understanding the power of doing that. That is much harder to automate. Understanding the nuances, the trade-offs that we can make in threshold values, in data collection, that will make models better, and really understanding how we can be most impactful. So when I am hiring, we are looking for people with that consultative and curious mindset. I think if you want to build models in a corner and not understand how your company makes business, this is probably not the place for you. I am looking for someone who is yeah, but fortunately that's easy to find. I don't think most data scientists want to build a model and not understand whether they're helping the company out. So I find that to be easy to find. And then you're really just looking for good communicators, good storytellers. That's another thing Gen AI is not super good at. So making sure that people understand how those models can fit in the process or in the production process. Most of my team has probably already done this. It was on their development plan this year. For example, they have to go on a site visit to one of our properties and actually see what we do in action. Again, helping really ground them to the problem, I think is really important because that's our value statement at this point.
Very interesting. And the other thing that you mentioned just now, it was very interesting that you were talking about a Gen AI project that you stood up in 2 weeks, and you said sort of, why not? So it's a follow-up question to that is, of course, Gen AI projects aren't really hardcore AI, let's say. And so as we're talking about skills, are you hiring separately for Gen AI skills, or have you found that you're able to blend those skills across the teams? How's that work for you?
We're really trying to be an enabler of Gen AI, so not all Gen AI will be built on my team. It is in our toolbox, right? For data scientists, Gen AI is a tool you can use, and we are more invested in solutions generally where there's structured data and Gen AI, right? Maybe Gen AI delivers the message. I don't think prompt engineering is probably a job forever. That feels like a skill we're going to teach a lot more people than we are going to hire separately for. So what we're really looking for today is what are the class of Gen AI problems that we want to release to everyone, that anyone can do. Should anyone ever type something from a PDF again, or should we ever try to, summarize text, or query a knowledge base with natural language. There's a lot of commodity capabilities of Gen AI that we'd like to enable for the rest of the company and not ever have to call us. Today, that looks more like enablement, which means possibly helping get the POCs started, helping understand how you do the API keys, or building tooling for them to keep track of. Doing prompt versioning is something we're really big on, so you can always roll back, treating it like you should, worrying about the monitoring, helping understand how to reduce hallucinations. I really view us as trying to teach and enable many, many others to do Gen AI, because otherwise we're a bottleneck. And you don't need specialized skills, so we should give it to everybody.
Very nice democratization of those particular activities. Switching a little bit now to something that's more operational in nature. Let's talk about process automation. I know even today there's a lot of work that's being done it's producing digital artifacts, but it's probably not fully in the digital domain yet. And I'm wondering, and I'm expecting that probably it might be the case that you might have encountered some processes like that as well at Cox?
Sure. Even at my waste management days, being on a landfill where someone used to take readings with a clipboard and a pencil and moving to IoT devices, that's a pretty big revolution for them and for us to have access to that level of data the very first time. And I think that's happening in a lot of industries. It's happening for us in our physical spaces as well. I think the trick there, or the key as you look at a process, is you could look at it with an AI lens and go, I could automate all of that, right? Maybe. But that's probably less likely to be successful, right? I view us as just walking one step up the ladder. So kind of make this boring part of your job, automated. My sense is that it's not like if you're a call center employee today that you don't know that AI is coming for your job. And in order for many of these AI models and automation efforts to be successful, we need willing participants, right? We should be trying to make their job easier and more efficient. And that is going to happen to all of us, to be fair. It's going much farther than call center, right? We are all going to be called, I think, to try to figure out how to use AI to make our jobs more efficient. It will become part of the fabric of how we do work. But in these early days where we're digitizing a process, I'm thinking pretty carefully about how far we think we can go. I don't want to run in with too many ideas, because I think we want to tread carefully and really get that adoption. Because if the humans on the receiving end of that technology want to slow down those efficiency gains or otherwise sort of stand in the way of more AI adoption, they probably can. And so I think there's this whole human element that we don't talk about enough. It's something I have to partner on. I don't get to, I don't do the business change, but I do inform it, and I'm super interested in that back and forth and that consultative about how we can make these models work for the people who actually use them, and who it's going to make their life feel better and not worse.
Interesting. Yes, there is that human dimension. And along with that, in the context of what is strategic, you were talking about things that drive revenue. And we're talking here about things that save on cost, which is difficult, sometimes difficult to demonstrate ROI, hitting the bottom line in a way that the CFO would agree it hit the bottom line. Have you encountered anything like that as well?
Oh, of course. I think we often see, like, I would say, like, if you can do it with 4 people today, is your business goal to do it with 3 tomorrow? Because we have a lot more business cases that are, I do it with 4 today and I save them all 10 minutes, or I can do it with 3.5 people today. Great, but the CFO can't see that, right? And of course, I would rather be making money than trying to find margin any day. Everyone knows that's easier. But we are tasked to be more efficient and do things, and automation is one of the ways in which we do that. And my guess is that you're going to see Gen AI. We're going to stack up a lot of cases to get to the efficiency, but fortunately there are a lot, right? I mean, the moneymaker for Instagram today is not, I'm guessing, that you can have a chat with Meta on the interface, but that their old bread and butter recommender engine recommending ad revenue is still the one making the money, right? And they have to put these Gen AI things on top of it. And so it'll be I'm kind of interested to see as these checks come due how that's going to play out. But I do think everyone knows coming, right? Some level of disillusionment because the checks are not going to be there. And I think, like I said, that goes back to, I still think you have to do it. But I think you need to go clear-eyed in that you might create some margin for yourself over time. But it might take a while because, again, if you're a call center, maybe you're just waiting for attrition and not backfilling, right? Things like that. Those things take time, and so they take time to show up on the bottom line. And I think it just might require more patience than our CFOs are going to wish for.
I agree. So this has been very interesting, and we've covered a lot of things. Now let's shift and look forward. So as you look out across the next couple of years, are there any emerging capabilities that you've got your eye on that seem especially interesting to you?
I'm very interested in the more sustainable Gen AI. I do think the demands on the electric grid between Bitcoin mining and Gen AI are probably not sustainable, and I don't even mean in a green environmental way. Like, I literally don't think we need air conditioning more than we need that. But there is a lot of research being done. There are papers coming out. I think they're called 1-bit models, but this idea that we can mute part of the network and lower the computational cost, or maybe it will be fine-tuned models. I mean, does your call center chatbot need to know who won the Super Bowl in 1987? Probably not. So, finding ways to make things that compute smaller. I'm definitely watching that space. That feels, if you can figure it out, that's going to be a winner. I think Microsoft is very invested in that. They'd like to be running Gen AI on your laptop. So, I think I think we're highly incentivized to get there. So I'm watching that. And I'm also watching as we digitize all these processes. My hope would be, but it might take us a while to get there, is that soon we're going to have a lot of agents talking to each other, or we're going to have a lot of digitized solutions talking to each other on a manufacturing floor. And then we're going to start thinking about how to optimize the different machines and the various levers and trade-offs between them. And I think that would be an exciting space when we get there.
That does sound very interesting. Both of those two things sound very interesting and relevant. Wow. Jodi, this has been great. I'm so glad we had a chance to connect again. One last question for you. How can people get in touch with you if they want to trade ideas with you based upon what they heard today on this podcast?
Well, if you can spell my name, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only one. So that makes me very easy to find. It's a good place to contact me.
Excellent. And to spell your first name properly, let's get that right.
All right, that's Jodi, and the last name is Blomberg, which is a lot like former New York Mayor Bloomberg, but just one L.
Thank you, Jodi. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the time today. This has been wonderful.
Thank you for having me, Jim. It's nice to catch up.
You've been listening to the AI Master Group podcast. I'm your host, Jim Griffin. Until next time, stay curious and stay in front.